The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, a silent and cold expanse that seemed to swallow everything it touched. For decades, humanity had stared into this void, hoping to uncover its secrets, but the universe rarely gave up its mysteries, willingly. On this particular day, however, something unusual happened. A faint blip appeared on the radar screens of Earth's orbital monitoring stations, catching the attention of technicians who were used to tracking asteroids, satellites, and the occasional comet. At first, they thought it might be debris or some long-forgotten piece of space junk drifting aimlessly through the cosmos. But as the object drew closer, they realized it was no ordinary piece of scrap metal. The ship was large, battered, and unmistakably human-made. Its design matched records of the Odyssey, a vessel that had vanished 70 years earlier during a deep space exploration mission. The Odyssey had been one of humanity's proudest achievements, a state-of-the-art craft built to withstand the harshest conditions of space. It carried a crew of 30 men and women, all highly trained and eager to push the boundaries of human knowledge. Their mission had been simple: chart an unexplored region of the galaxy and gather data about distant stars and planets. They had sent back reports for several months before falling silent without explanation. Search parties were dispatched, but no trace of the ship was ever found. Over time, the Odyssey became a legend, a cautionary tale whispered among astronauts about the dangers of venturing too far into the unknown. Now, against all odds, the ship was returning. News of its reappearance spread quickly, sparking both excitement and unease. Scientists, military officials, and government leaders scrambled to make sense of the situation. How could a ship lost for 7 decades suddenly reappear? What had happened to its crew? And why did the vessel look so damaged, its once gleaming hull now pockmarked with craters and streaked with scorch marks? Captain Laura Hayes stood in the control room of the United Earth Space Command, watching as her team analyzed the incoming data. She was a tall woman with sharp features and piercing blue eyes, known for her calm demeanor under pressure. Her uniform was immaculate, though she barely noticed it as she leaned over a console, studying the readings. Beside her, Daniel Carter, a young engineer with a mop of curly brown hair, tapped furiously at his keyboard. "This doesn't add up," he muttered, shaking his head. "No ship could survive out there that long without maintenance or communication. It's impossible." Laura didn't respond immediately. She trusted Daniel's expertise. He was one of the best engineers in the program, but she also knew that sometimes the universe defied logic. Instead, she focused on the live feed from the orbital cameras. The Odyssey loomed larger now, its silhouette jagged and uneven. Parts of its exterior were missing entirely, exposing twisted metal and tangled wires beneath. Yet despite its condition, the ship moved steadily, guided by automated systems that somehow still functioned after all these years. "We need to bring it in," Laura said finally, breaking the silence. "Prepare a docking bay and assemble a boarding party. I want every precaution taken. We don't know what we're dealing with here." Daniel nodded, already relaying orders to the rest of the team. Within minutes, preparations were underway. The docking station orbiting Earth was placed on high alert, its staff briefed on the situation. Meanwhile, Laura gathered a small group of specialists to accompany her aboard the Odyssey. Among them was Dr. Emily Ross, a physicist whose work on advanced technologies had earned her a reputation as one of the brightest minds of her generation. There was also Sam Parker, a technician with a knack for troubleshooting even the most complex machinery. Both were experienced and resourceful, qualities Laura valued above all else. As the Odyssey approached the docking bay, the tension in the control room grew palpable. Everyone watched intently as the massive ship slid into position, its thrusters firing briefly to stabilize its descent. When the airlock sealed shut, signaling a secure connection, Laura led her team forward, their weapons drawn and flashlights cutting through the darkness. The interior of the ship was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of life support systems struggling to maintain pressure. Dust coated every surface, thick enough to leave footprints as they moved cautiously down the narrow corridors. The first thing they noticed was the lack of bodies. Not a single skeleton or trace of human remains could be found anywhere. It was as if the crew had simply vanished, leaving behind only the ship itself. Laura exchanged worried glances with Emily and Sam. This wasn't normal. Even in the worst case scenarios, explosions, collisions, catastrophic failures, there were usually signs of what had happened. Here, there was nothing. Just empty rooms and abandoned equipment. Their search eventually led them to the central chamber, a large circular room dominated by a strange device in the middle. It was unlike anything they'd seen before. A towering structure made of smooth, black material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Strange symbols etched into its surface pulsed faintly with an otherworldly blue glow. Wires snaked out from its base, connecting it to various parts of the ship's systems. Whatever it was, it clearly wasn't standard-issue technology. "What is this?" Sam asked, his voice low and hesitant. He reached out instinctively, but Laura grabbed his arm before he could touch it. "Don't," she warned. "We don't know what it does." Emily stepped closer, her scientific curiosity outweighing her fear. She ran her fingers along the edge of the device, examining its intricate patterns. "It's not human," she said after a moment. "This level of engineering, it's beyond us, way beyond us." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implications. If the device wasn't human-made, then where had it come from? And how had it ended up aboard the Odyssey? Laura felt a chill run down her spine as she considered the possibilities. Had the crew encountered something or someone out there in the depths of space? Something powerful enough to leave such advanced technology behind? Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered, plunging the room into brief darkness. When they came back on, the glow from the device had grown brighter, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Laura tightened her grip on her weapon, scanning the room for any sign of movement. The others followed suit, their nerves stretched taut like piano strings. "We need to get out of here," Sam said, his voice trembling slightly. "This place feels wrong," Laura agreed, though she didn't say it aloud. Something about the Odyssey unsettled her, a gut feeling that they were treading on dangerous ground. Still, they couldn't leave without gathering more information. The answers they sought might lie hidden within the ship's logs or the mysterious device itself. With a deep breath, she signaled for the team to continue their investigation, knowing full well that they were stepping into the unknown. As they worked, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The ship seemed alive in a way she couldn't explain, its silence oppressive and suffocating. Every creak of metal, every faint hum of machinery felt like a warning. Whatever had happened to the Odyssey and its crew, it wasn't over yet. Somewhere, lurking in the shadows, the truth waited, and Laura had a sinking suspicion that it wouldn't stay hidden for long. The return of the Odyssey quickly became the biggest story on Earth, dominating headlines and sparking endless debates. Scientists, engineers, and military officials worked around the clock to understand what had happened to the ship and why it had come back after so many years. The mysterious device found in the central chamber was transported to a secure research facility, where Dr. Emily Ross led a team of experts in studying its properties. From the moment they began their analysis, it was clear that this was no ordinary piece of technology. Emily stood in the lab, her eyes fixed on the towering black structure. It pulsed with a faint blue light, the symbols etched into its surface shifting subtly as if alive. She ran her fingers over her clipboard, jotting down notes while her mind raced with possibilities. "This thing doesn't follow any known principles of physics," she said aloud, more to herself than to anyone else. Beside her, Sam Parker adjusted a scanner, trying to get a clearer reading. His brow furrowed as the device emitted strange readings that didn't match anything in their database. "What do you mean?" Sam asked, glancing up from his work. "You think it's alien?" "I don't just think it," Emily replied, her voice steady but tinged with awe. "I know it. This isn't human-made. Look at the materials. It's not metal or plastic or anything we've ever seen before. And the energy signature? It's off the charts. We're talking about something way beyond our level of understanding." Her words sent a shiver through the room. Everyone present knew the implications. If the device truly was alien, then humanity had made contact with extraterrestrial life. Not through peaceful means, but through the remnants of a lost ship. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. What did it mean for the crew of the Odyssey? Where were they now? And why had this artifact been left behind? As the days passed, fragments of information began to emerge from the logs recovered from the ship. Captain Laura Hayes spent hours reviewing the data alongside her team, piecing together the fragmented entries. The recordings painted a picture of desperation and wonder as the crew encountered something far greater than themselves. One log in particular caught Laura's attention. It was recorded by Commander Ryan Mitchell, the original captain of the Odyssey. His voice was calm but carried an undertone of unease. "We've made contact," he said, his words echoing through the speakers in the briefing room. "It wasn't planned, and it wasn't easy to find them. They're not like us. They don't have bodies, not in the way we understand. They exist as energy, pure and vast. At first we thought they were hostile, but they've shown us things, knowledge, power. They say they can help us evolve, transcend our limitations. But there's a price, a cost we might not be ready to pay." Laura paused the recording, leaning back in her chair. Her expression was unreadable, but inside her thoughts churned. Who or what were these beings? What kind of deal had the crew struck with them? And most importantly, what had happened to the 30 men and women who had set out on this mission? Dr. Ross joined the discussion later that day, bringing new insights from her analysis of the device. "There's something you need to see," she told Laura as they walked into the lab. She gestured toward a monitor displaying complex patterns of energy fluctuation. "This thing isn't just sitting there, it's active, it's scanning everything around it. Our planet, our solar system, even nearby star clusters. I think it's sending information somewhere." "Somewhere?" Laura asked sharply. "Where?" "That's the problem," Emily admitted. "We don't know, but based on the signal patterns, it's reaching far beyond our range, light years away, maybe farther. Whoever built this tech has access to parts of the universe we can't even imagine." The revelation weighed heavily on Laura. If the device was transmitting data, it could mean trouble. Was it calling for reinforcements? Were the beings Commander Mitchell described preparing to come here? She couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with forces far beyond their control. Meanwhile, strange occurrences began happening around the research facility. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Power surges disrupted experiments, and several staff members reported hearing faint whispers when no one else was in the room. At first, these incidents were dismissed as stress or coincidence, but as they grew more frequent, people started to worry. One night, while reviewing footage from the cameras installed inside the Odyssey, Sam noticed something chilling. "Hey, take a look at this," he called out to Emily, pointing at a monitor. On the screen, hidden in the shadows of the central chamber, stood a figure. It was tall and skeletal, its form glowing faintly with the same blue light as the device. Its head tilted slightly as if watching the camera. Emily froze, her breath catching in her throat. That wasn't part of the boarding party," she stammered. "What is it?" Sam rewound the footage, zooming in for a closer look. The figure remained motionless, its hollow eyes staring directly into the lens. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it wasn't there when we searched the ship. Something or someone is still aboard." Word of the discovery spread quickly, prompting Laura to order a lockdown of the facility. Security teams swept the premises, searching for any signs of intrusion, but found nothing unusual. Still, the sense of unease grew stronger with each passing hour. The whispers became louder, more insistent, until they seemed to echo through the halls. Then, one by one, people started disappearing. It began with minor staff members, technicians and assistants who worked late shifts. Their desks would be left untouched, their tools abandoned mid-task. When questioned, colleagues claimed they hadn't seen them leave. Search parties combed the building but turned up empty-handed. The only clue was a fine layer of ash scattered near the spots where the missing persons had last been seen. Laura called an emergency meeting to address the situation. Sitting at the head of the table, she looked at the faces of her team, each one marked by exhaustion and fear. We need to figure out what's going on, she said firmly. Whatever is happening, it's connected to that device. We can't keep ignoring it. Emily nodded, though her hands trembled as she flipped through her notes. I think I know what it's doing, she said slowly. It's creating a bridge, a connection between our world and wherever those beings are from. Every time it pulses, it gets stronger. If we don't stop it, it'll open completely. And then what? Sam asked, his voice tight with dread. Emily hesitated before answering. Then they'll come through. The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Laura clenched her fists, her mind racing. They couldn't let that happen. Humanity wasn't ready to face whatever lay on the other side of the bridge, but how could they stop it? The device was unlike anything they'd ever encountered, and destroying it might have unintended consequences. We need to shut it down, Laura declared finally. Find a way to disable it before it's too late. But how? Sam protested. We don't even know how it works. We'll figure it out, Laura insisted, her tone leaving no room for argument. We have to. Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to devise a plan. Emily pored over the data, searching for weaknesses in the device's design. Sam tinkered with prototypes, attempting to build a tool capable of disrupting its energy field. Meanwhile, Laura coordinated with security teams to ensure the safety of everyone involved. Despite their efforts, the atmosphere in the facility grew increasingly tense. The whispers grew louder, the disappearances more frequent. Fear spread like wildfire, threatening to consume them all. One evening, as Emily reviewed the logs from the Odyssey, once more she stumbled upon another recording. This one was shorter, filled with static and distortion, but the message was clear. Commander Mitchell's voice crackled through the speakers, strained and urgent. They're using us, he said, his words barely audible. They promised us knowledge, immortality, but they lied. They took us, consumed us. Don't let them take you too. Emily felt a chill run down her spine as the recording ended. She replayed it several times, her heart pounding in her chest. Whatever deal the crew had made with the beings, it had cost them everything. And now, the same fate awaited humanity, unless they acted quickly. Summoning Laura and Sam to the lab, Emily played the recording for them. Neither spoke as the haunting words echoed through the room. Finally, Laura broke the silence. We have to destroy it, she said, her voice resolute. Whatever the risk, we can't let it stay operational. Sam nodded reluctantly, though his face was pale. If we overload the core, it might sever the connection, he suggested. But getting close enough to do that, it's suicide. Not necessarily, Laura countered. We'll rig explosives to trigger remotely. That way, we minimize exposure. It was a risky plan, but they had no other choice. Preparations began immediately, with Sam constructing the necessary devices, while Emily calculated the optimal placement for maximum impact. Laura coordinated the operation, ensuring every detail was accounted for. As they worked, the presence of the skeletal figure loomed large in their minds. They knew it was still out there, watching, waiting. By the time everything was ready, the facility was nearly deserted. Most of the staff had been evacuated, leaving only a skeleton crew to assist with the final stages. Laura gathered her team for one last briefing. This is it, she said, looking each of them in the eye. The central chamber felt colder than before, its air thick with an unnatural stillness. Laura, Emily, and Sam moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing against the metal floor. The device loomed ahead, its blue glow casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. The skeletal figure stood nearby, unmoving but watchful, its hollow eyes seeming to pierce through them. Despite their preparation, none of them could shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Laura carried the explosives in a reinforced case slung over her shoulder, her fingers brushing against the detonator in her pocket. She glanced at Emily and Sam, both of whom looked pale but determined. Stay sharp, she whispered, her voice steady despite the knot tightening in her stomach. We only get one shot at this. Emily nodded, clutching her tablet tightly. Her screen displayed a live feed of the device's energy readings, which were spiking erratically. "It knows we're here," she said quietly, her eyes darting between the numbers and the glowing structure. "The pulses are faster now. It's reacting to us." Sam adjusted the tool belt around his waist, checking the charges one last time. "Let's just hope these things work," he muttered under his breath. He didn't need to say what everyone else was thinking. If the explosives failed, they wouldn't have a backup plan. As they approached the device, the whispers began, again, faint at first but growing louder with each step. They weren't words, not exactly, but sounds that twisted into something almost recognizable. It was as if the voices were trying to communicate, pleading or warning, though no one could tell which. The sensation made Sam's skin crawl and he clenched his jaw to keep from shouting out loud. "Focus," Laura reminded them sharply, sensing their unease. "Don't let it distract you." Reaching the base of the device, they spread out to position the charges. Emily consulted her tablet, pointing out weak points where the energy flow seemed most concentrated. "Here," she said, marking a spot near the bottom. "And here." She indicated another area higher up, closer to the pulsating core. Sam went to work, attaching the charges carefully while avoiding direct contact with the strange black material. Every time his hand got too close, he felt a sharp jolt, like static electricity but stronger, more invasive. "This thing doesn't want us messing with it," he grumbled, shaking off the tingling sensation. Laura kept watch, her weapon trained on the skeletal figure standing silently a few feet away. It hadn't moved since they entered, yet its presence radiated menace. She couldn't tell if it was alive in the traditional sense or some kind of projection, but either way it unnerved her. "Hurry up," she urged, her voice low but urgent. Just as Sam finished placing the final charge, the room shifted. The blue light intensified, bathing everything in an eerie glow. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, drowning out all other sound. Emily stumbled back, dropping her tablet as pain shot through her head. Images flooded her mind, flashes of vast, empty spaces and swirling clouds of energy. She clutched her temples, gasping for air. "Emily!" Laura shouted, rushing to her side. "What's happening?" I don't know," Emily stammered, struggling to regain her footing. "It's showing me something. Like memories, but not mine." Before Laura could respond, the skeletal figure stepped forward. Its movements were slow and deliberate, each step accompanied by a low hum that resonated in their chests. When it spoke, its voice was a cacophony of tones, layered and discordant. "You resist," it said, tilting its head. "Why do you resist? We offer salvation." "Salvation?" Laura spat, raising her weapon. "Your salvation killed my people, took them from us." "They chose," the figure replied, its tone indifferent. "They sought knowledge, power, immortality. We granted their desires." "At what cost?" Laura demanded, her finger hovering over the trigger. "Where are they now?" "They exist," the figure answered cryptically, "beyond form, beyond limits. Would you deny yourselves such transcendence?" "No," Laura said firmly. "Not like this. Not if it means losing who we are." The figure paused, studying her with its hollow gaze. Then, without warning, it lunged. Laura fired instinctively, but the bullets passed harmlessly through its body, dissipating like smoke. Behind her, Sam grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "We have to go," he yelled over the noise. "Now!" Laura hesitated for a split second, then turned and ran, activating the detonator as she went. A series of small explosions rocked the chamber, sending shockwaves rippling outward. The device shuddered violently, its glow flickering as chunks of black material broke free and crumbled to the ground. The skeletal figure staggered, its form destabilizing as the bridge it had created began to collapse. "Keep moving," Laura shouted, urging her team forward. Debris rained down around them, forcing them to dodge falling pieces of the ceiling. The heat was unbearable now, searing their skin as the core of the device started to overload. Emily tripped, landing hard, on her knees, but Sam hauled her up and pushed her ahead. They reached the doorway just as the final explosion tore through the chamber, engulfing everything in blinding light. When the dust settled, the three of them lay sprawled on the floor outside, coughing and gasping for breath. The central chamber was gone, reduced to a smoldering crater. Smoke filled the air and the acrid smell of burned metal stung their nostrils. For a moment, none of them spoke, too stunned to process what had just happened. Finally, Laura sat up, wiping soot from her face. Her ears rang and her body ached, but she was alive. Beside her, Emily and Sam groaned as they struggled to their feet. Did we stop it?" Sam asked hoarsely, his voice barely audible. Emily leaned heavily against the wall, her legs trembling. "I think so," she replied, though her expression was uncertain. "The energy signatures are gone. Whatever connection it had, it's severed." Laura nodded, relief washing over her despite the chaos surrounding them. "Good," she said simply. "That's good." But even as she spoke, she couldn't shake the lingering doubt gnawing at the edges of her mind. The figure's words echoed in her thoughts like they exist beyond form. Had they truly destroyed the beings or merely driven them away? And what about the crew of the Odyssey? Were they truly lost forever, or had they become something else entirely? As emergency teams arrived to assess the damage, Laura led her team out of the wreckage, their steps slow and heavy. They had succeeded in their mission, but the victory felt hollow. Too many questions remained unanswered. Too many shadows lingered in the corners of their minds. Later that night, as Laura stared out the window of her quarters aboard the orbital station, she found herself unable to sleep. Below her, Earth glowed softly in the darkness, a fragile blue gem floating in the vast emptiness of space. Humanity had survived, for now, but the encounter with the unknown had left its mark. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, forces far greater than anything they could comprehend continued to exist. Forces that might one day return. For the first time in her career, Laura questioned whether humanity was ready for the challenges that awaited them among the stars. The universe was vast and full of wonders, yes, but also dangers unlike anything they had ever faced. As she watched the planet spin silently beneath her, she vowed to be prepared. No matter what came next, they would face it together. Because running wasn't an option, not when the fate of their species hung in the balance. In the days that followed, reports poured in from across the globe. Scientists analyzed every scrap of data recovered from the Odyssey, piecing together fragments of the story. Governments debated how to handle the revelation of alien contact, while conspiracy theories spread like wildfire online. But amidst the chaos, one truth became clear. Humanity's place in the cosmos had changed forever. The Odyssey served as both a warning and a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge came with risks, and that sometimes the greatest discoveries carried the heaviest price. Yet even as fear gripped the hearts of many, others saw opportunity. If humanity could survive this encounter, they reasoned, then perhaps they could thrive in the face of future challenges. For Laura Hayes, however, the experience had been deeply personal. She thought often of Commander Ryan Mitchell and the crew of the Odyssey, wondering what choices they had made and whether she would have done the same in their position. Their sacrifice and the lessons learned from it would shape the course of human history for generations to come. And somewhere, deep in the recesses of space, the Synthari watched and waited. Their plans may have been thwarted, but their patience was infinite. One day they would try again. Until then, the stars remained silent witnesses to the fragile balance between curiosity and survival. The aftermath of the explosion left the facility in ruins, its walls scorched and its halls littered with debris. Emergency teams worked tirelessly to secure the area, but the damage was extensive. The central chamber, once home to the mysterious alien device, was now a gaping hole filled with twisted metal and ash. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, the sense of unease lingered. The skeletal figure was gone, along with the eerie blue glow that had haunted the team since their first encounter. Yet no one felt truly safe. Not yet. Laura stood at the edge of the crater, her arms crossed as she surveyed the destruction. Her uniform was stained with soot, and her face bore the marks of exhaustion, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. Behind her, Emily and Sam sat on a pile of rubble, catching their breath. Both looked shaken but alive, their survival a small victory in the face of overwhelming odds. "We did it," Sam said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "We stopped it. For now," Laura replied, without turning around. Her tone was cautious, tinged with doubt. She didn't share Sam's optimism, not when so many questions still hung unanswered. Had they truly destroyed the beings known as the Synthari? Or had they merely delayed the inevitable? Emily nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the ground. "It's over here," she admitted. "But what about out there?" She gestured vaguely toward the stars beyond the station's windows. "If they're as powerful as we think, they won't stay gone forever." Her words cast a shadow over the group, reminding them of the larger implications of what they'd faced. Humanity had brushed against something ancient and incomprehensible, and though they had survived this encounter, it wouldn't be the last. Somewhere in the depths of space, the Synthari waited, patient and unyielding. Back on Earth, news of the Odyssey's return and the events that followed dominated global headlines. Governments scrambled to contain the story, issuing vague statements about technological anomalies and classified research. But leaks were inevitable, and soon the public learned fragments of the truth. Speculation ran rampant, fueled by grainy footage of the skeletal figure and eyewitness accounts from surviving staff members. Conspiracy theories flourished, ranging from government cover-ups to warnings of an impending alien invasion. In response, the United Earth Space Command convened an emergency summit, bringing together scientists, military leaders, and politicians to discuss the implications of humanity's encounter with extraterrestrial life. Laura Hayes was called upon to present her findings, her testimony serving as the cornerstone of the investigation. Standing before a packed auditorium, she recounted the events aboard the Odyssey, describing the device, the whispers, and the skeletal figure in chilling detail. "They offered us knowledge," Laura explained, her voice steady despite the weight of the room's attention. "But it came at a cost, one we weren't willing to pay. What happened to the crew of the Odyssey is proof of that." Her words sent ripples through the audience. Some listened with wide-eyed fascination, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly uneasy with the implications. When she finished speaking, a wave of murmurs swept through the crowd, punctuated by urgent questions. "What exactly were these beings?" asked a senator from the United States, his brow furrowed. "And how do we protect ourselves if they come back?" Laura hesitated before answering. "We don't know much about them," she admitted. "They called themselves the Synthari, but beyond that, our understanding is limited. They exist as energy, transcending physical form. Their motives are unclear, but one thing is certain. They see us as inferior. To them, we're primitive, fragile, and that makes us vulnerable." The room fell silent, the gravity of her statement sinking in. Humanity had always dreamed of meeting intelligent life beyond Earth, but few had considered the possibility that such an encounter might end in disaster. Now, faced with the reality of the Synthari, the dream seemed more like a nightmare. As discussions continued, Dr. Emily Ross dedicated herself to studying the remnants of the alien technology. Though the device had been destroyed, fragments of its structure remained intact, scattered across the wreckage. Each piece was carefully collected and transported to a secure laboratory for analysis. Emily led a team of physicists and engineers working around the clock to unlock its secrets. "This material defies everything we know about physics," Emily muttered one evening, holding up a shard of the black substance under a microscope. It shimmered faintly, almost as if alive. Beside her, a young researcher named Clara adjusted the settings, trying to get a clearer image. Could it be some kind of alloy? Clara asked, jotting down notes. Or maybe a composite? No, Emily replied, shaking her head. It's not made of elements we recognize. Look at the molecular structure. It's completely alien. Clara frowned, leaning closer to examine the sample. So what does that mean? We can't even begin to replicate it. Not yet, Emily said, her tone thoughtful. But if we can understand how it works, we might be able to defend ourselves next time. Knowledge is power, remember? Her determination inspired those around her, even as the enormity of the task weighed heavily on their shoulders. Every discovery brought new questions, each piece of the puzzle revealing only a fraction of the whole. Still, progress was progress, and Emily refused to give up. She knew that humanity's survival might depend on their ability to learn from the Syntheri's technology without falling into the same traps as the crew of the Odyssey. Meanwhile, Sam Parker struggled to adjust to life after the ordeal. Though physically unharmed, he couldn't shake the memories of the skeletal figure and the oppressive atmosphere of the central chamber. Nightmares plagued him, vivid and relentless, leaving him drained and restless. He avoided talking about it, brushing off concerned inquiries from colleagues and friends, but the weight of what he'd witnessed gnawed at him constantly. One night, unable to sleep, Sam wandered into the lab where Emily and her team were working. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the cluttered tables. Emily looked up as he entered, surprised to see him so late. Can't sleep? She asked gently, setting down her tools. Sam shook his head, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I keep seeing it, he admitted quietly. That thing, those eyes. I don't think I'll ever forget them. Emily nodded sympathetically. None of us will, she said. But we have to keep going. If we let fear control us, then they've already won. Her words struck a chord with Sam, though he wasn't sure he believed them entirely. Fear was natural. It kept people alive. But Emily was right about one thing. Giving in to despair wouldn't help anyone. With a deep breath, he forced himself to focus on the present, joining Emily in examining the fragments of the device. Together, they pored over the data, searching for answers that might prevent another catastrophe. Days turned into weeks, and the initial panic began to subside. Life on Earth returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the memory of the Odyssey lingered in the collective consciousness. Schools added lessons about the dangers of unchecked curiosity, while governments invested heavily in planetary defense systems. The message was clear. Humanity needed to prepare for the unknown, even if it meant confronting fears they'd rather ignore. For Laura Hayes, the experience had changed her irrevocably. Once driven solely by ambition and duty, she now carried a deeper sense of responsibility. She saw the fragility of human existence in a way she never had before, and it humbled her. Late at night, as she gazed out at the stars from her quarters aboard the orbital station, she thought often of the crew of the Odyssey. What choices had they made? What sacrifices had they endured? And most importantly, what could humanity learn from their mistakes? She didn't have all the answers, but she vowed to find them. One day, humanity would venture further into the cosmos, seeking new worlds and new possibilities. When that day came, Laura wanted to ensure they were ready, not just technologically, but morally. The universe was vast and full of wonders, yes, but also dangers unlike anything they had ever faced. As she watched the planet spin silently beneath her, she resolved to be vigilant. Because running wasn't an option, not when the fate of their species hung in the balance. Somewhere far beyond the reach of human observation, the Syntheri observed the events unfolding on Earth. They were patient beings, accustomed to waiting, ons for opportunities to arise. The destruction of their device had been unexpected but not catastrophic. It was merely a setback, a minor inconvenience in their grand design. Through the void, they sent out tendrils of energy, probing the edges of humanity's domain. They were curious about these fragile creatures, these fleeting sparks of life that dared to challenge the infinite. Perhaps there was value in studying them further, in testing their limits. Or perhaps they would simply consume them, as they had countless others before. Either way, the Synthari would return. And when they did, humanity would face a choice: evolve or perish. Months passed since the destruction of the alien device, and life on Earth slowly returned to a rhythm of uneasy normalcy. The initial shock of humanity's encounter with the Synthari had faded, replaced by a cautious determination to prepare for whatever might come next. Governments poured resources into developing advanced defense systems, while scientists worked tirelessly to understand the remnants of the alien technology recovered from the Odyssey. Yet, despite their efforts, the feeling of vulnerability lingered, like a shadow that refused to lift. Laura Hayes spent her days overseeing the newly formed Interstellar Defense Initiative, a coalition tasked with safeguarding humanity against extraterrestrial threats. Her office was a small, sterile room aboard the orbital station, its walls lined with maps of the solar system and schematics of potential alien vessels. She often found herself staring at these charts late at night, her mind racing with possibilities. What would happen if the Synthari returned? Would humanity be ready? Or would they fall prey to the same mistakes that had doomed the crew of the Odyssey? Her thoughts were interrupted one evening by a knock at the door. "Come in," she called, turning to see Dr. Emily Ross step inside. Emily looked exhausted, her eyes bloodshot from countless hours spent in the lab, but there was a spark of excitement in her expression. "We found something," Emily said without preamble, holding up a tablet displaying a series of complex graphstone. "It's not much, but it's progress." Laura gestured for her to sit, leaning forward with interest. "What is it?" "It's a pattern," Emily explained, tapping the screen to highlight certain sections. "In the energy signatures we've been analyzing from the fragments of the device. They're faint, almost undetectable, but they repeat at regular intervals. It's like a code." "A message?" Laura asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. "Possibly," Emily admitted. "If it is, we're still years away from deciphering it. But even understanding this much is huge. If we can crack their language or whatever this is, we might be able to predict their next move." Laura nodded slowly, absorbing the implications. Communication was key. If humanity could find a way to talk to the Synthari, maybe they could avoid another confrontation. But the idea also carried risks. Misunderstandings could escalate quickly, especially when dealing with beings so vastly different from humans. Still, it was better than waiting blindly for the next attack. Meanwhile, Sam Parker had thrown himself into his work, channeling his lingering fear into productivity. He spent hours tinkering with prototypes designed to disrupt alien energy fields, drawing inspiration from the fragments of the destroyed device. His latest invention, a handheld pulse generator, was undergoing testing in the lab when Laura arrived for an inspection. "How's it coming along?" she asked, watching as Sam adjusted the settings on the device. "It's promising," he replied, though his tone was cautious. "It won't stop them completely, but it should buy us time if they show up again. Think of it as a stun gun for aliens." Laura raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "A stun gun for aliens, that's a first." Sam shrugged, grinning faintly. "Hey, I'm just trying to stay ahead of the curve." Despite his lightheartedness, Laura could see the weight he carried. The nightmares hadn't stopped, and neither had the memories. But Sam was coping, finding solace in the belief that his work could make a difference. For now, that was enough. As weeks turned into months, humanity began taking bolder steps toward securing its future. Space stations equipped with experimental weapon systems were deployed to strategic points throughout the solar system. Research. Teams worked around the clock to develop faster-than-light communication methods, hoping to establish early warning systems for alien incursions. Even private companies joined the effort, investing billions into projects aimed at advancing human technology. But progress came with challenges. Public opinion remained divided, with some advocating for aggressive measures to defend Earth while others argued for diplomacy and peaceful coexistence. Debates raged in governments and media outlets worldwide, reflecting the deep uncertainty that gripped society. Could humanity trust the Synthari, or were they inherently hostile? Laura wrestled with these questions daily, knowing that any decision she made could have far-reaching consequences. She consulted with experts, reviewed data, and weighed every option carefully. In the end, she settled on a dual approach: strengthen defenses while continuing efforts to decode the alien signals. Humanity needed to be prepared for war, but it also needed to leave room for peace. One night, as Laura stood gazing out at the stars, she received an unexpected call from Emily. Her voice was urgent, tinged with both excitement and apprehension. "You need to see this," Emily said, her words rushing together. "We've detected something." "What kind of something?" Laura asked, already heading toward the lab. "It's hard to explain," Emily admitted. "Just get here as fast as you can." When Laura arrived, the lab was alive with activity. Monitors displayed streams of data, and technicians scrambled to process incoming information. Emily met her at the door, leading her to a central console where a live feed showed a distant region of space. "There," Emily pointed, highlighting a cluster of blinking red dots. "Those aren't asteroids or comets. They're moving too fast, too deliberately. And look at the energy readings. They match what we've seen before." Laura's stomach tightened as she studied the display. The dots were arranged in a formation, almost like a fleet. "Do you think it's them?" she asked quietly. "It's possible," Emily replied, her voice steady but strained. "Whatever it is, it's heading straight for us." The realization hit the team like a punch to the gut. All their preparations, all their planning, it was about to be put to the test. Laura took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "Alert command," she instructed, "and start evacuating non-essential personnel from the station. We don't know what we're dealing with yet, but we can't take chances." As orders were issued and protocols activated, Laura felt a strange calm settle over her. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. Whether it ended in triumph or disaster, humanity would face the unknown head-on. There was no turning back now. Hours later, the fleet loomed closer, its presence undeniable. Ships unlike anything humanity had ever seen filled the monitors, sleek and angular with surfaces that shimmered like liquid metal. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, as they approached the outer edges of Earth's orbit. Laura stood in the control room, surrounded by her team. Everyone was tense, their eyes glued to the screens. "They're hailing us," announced a technician, his voice trembling slightly. "Put it through," Laura ordered, stepping forward. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room, revealing a figure bathed in blue light. It wasn't the skeletal form they had encountered before, but something equally alien, tall and slender, with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. "You resisted," the being said, its voice layered and resonant. "Yet you persist. Why?" Laura swallowed hard, choosing her words carefully. "We are survivors," she replied, her voice firm. "We seek knowledge, but not at the cost of our identity. Tell me, who are you?" "We are the Synthari," the figure answered simply. "And you are fragile, temporary, yet you challenge eternity." There was a long pause, the tension in the room palpable. Then Laura spoke again, her tone unwavering. "We may be temporary, but we are strong. Together, we will decide our own fate. Will you respect that?" The Synthari tilted its head, studying her with an unreadable expression. For a moment, no one moved. Then, without warning, the fleet began retreating, disappearing into the void as quickly as it had arrived. Silence fell over the control room as the threat passed. No one spoke, each person processing what had just happened. Had they truly driven the Synthari away? Or was this merely a reprieve? Laura exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Turning to her team, she offered a small, weary smile. "We did it," she said softly. "For now." But deep down she knew the battle wasn't over. The Synthari had shown mercy, or perhaps curiosity, but they would return. When they did, humanity would need to be stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before. As the lights of the station dimmed for the night, Laura gazed once more at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of human understanding, the universe waited, and humanity, fragile and flawed, stood ready to meet it.